What's up, everyone? Happy Friday. Appreciate y'all joining. Sorry that we were a little later on the announcement, only 5 minutes before than usual. We had some technical difficulties, but we sorted them all out before the wire. It seems like every week Discord throws a little curveball at us, so we always do some testing ahead of time. But look, we were able to get it ironed out and get started on time. So appreciate everyone joining, and with that, we'll get it kicked off, and I'll kick it over to Wally to kick off the hellos on this Friday.
Yeah, hi everyone. Happy Friday. Over to you, AE.
Hey guys, happy evening. And I didn't get to go first this time, so I feel a bit betrayed.
Okay, well, I'll go next. Hey everyone, thanks for joining. Good to see everyone. Thanks. Shout out to Discord for keeping us on our toes. And yeah.
And yeah, to me, I guess. Hey guys, it's Bobby. I appreciate you all logging in again for the next edition of Your Herd.
Alrighty, good stuff, good stuff. So this week, we kind of had a decent run of kind of community questions about what gauges are and how they benefit yAxis, and if you're a staker today, what do you have to do, and what is changing there. So wanted to kind of do a rundown of what gauges are and how they sort of play in V3, and give you a little bit of walkthrough, and also look at some examples of the success that Curve has had and kind of some others in implementing gauges, and then from there we'll just open it up to questions per usual. So first kind of diving in on the functionality and what they actually do. So basically, as a staker, if you're a yAxis staker today, you would, when the gauges go live, you would migrate your tokens from the current staking contract, and you're going to select a lock time. So, 1 week to 1 year. And then you're going to receive VE yAxis, which is vote escrowed yAxis. And it's based on the amount of yAxis that you have and the length of time you choose to lock. So selecting the max lock time, which would be 1 year, is going to be the most yAxis that you could possibly get, and then it sort of decreases linearly from there down to the min lock time, which would be 1 week. So it's essentially time weighted, obviously incentivizing those that lock longer. And from there, like from a staker perspective, you're looking at determining your voting power and allocating emissions, and then also boosting your rewards. That's kind of the perspective there. And then as a vault user, and hopefully maybe this might be a good opportunity for you, because maybe you're only a staker today and you're a little hesitant to be a vault user, but you have some Bitcoin, Ethereum hanging around, and you're gonna have the gauges, and you're gonna be staking anyways, and you can boost your rewards as a vault user with by staking yAxis, and generating VE yAxis. So basically, you'll get a little bit of capital efficiency there and have some kind of dual purpose. And so that's great. And then if you're strictly just in it to use the vaults, you're going to have a cleaner V3 deposit process, where you're going to not need to convert to 3CRV, and then obviously broader asset support with supporting the new assets, and then just an updated front end in general. That's real slick. And then kind of instead of staking your token, so today you basically stake the MVLT token in the current reward contract to receive yAxis rewards on top. So instead of doing that, you will stake it in the liquidity gauge that aligns with the asset you just provided liquidity for. So in the V3 canonical vaults, if you deposit Ethereum, you would want to stake that vault token, which will be in ERC 677, for gas efficiency, and you will stake that in the Ethereum liquidity gauge. And then if you have VE yAxis, and you want to take advantage of the full kind of ecosystem, you can boost your rewards on your vault position. And then also you can basically allocate emissions using the yAxis to the places where you're providing liquidity currently. So if you are in the Ethereum, if you're in the Ethereum vault, you obviously want to allocate emissions to the place that you're providing liquidity for. So it's another use case and another point of utility there. So now that we kind of did a little overview of sort of both sides of the coin and the utility, the functionality, how it works, we'll look a little bit about the success that they've had over at Curve. And obviously Curve was they contribute so much innovation to the DeFi space, and they created the gauges model. And since about 1 year ago, they implemented gauges. It actually, I think it's almost a year ago to the date. VECRV has grown from zero steadily up to over 43% of all CRV are locked as VECRV. And that's as their supply has grown, exponentially. They have an aggressive emission schedule over at Curve, and even from the beginning of the year, it started at 29% of the supply was locked as VECRV. So now over 43%. You see obviously big growth even in a shorter amount of time. Again, especially in that aggressive emission schedule, and the fact that many are farming CRV as it's a DeFi base layer, which is something that we discussed in a previous episode. And then, that's something that yAxis wouldn't really have to go up against. It's obviously not a base layer, so potential for even more of the supply to get locked up, given its kind of position in the yield stack and being a little bit higher up in the stack. So, this percentage, again, like this percentage share growth of VECRV, so locked CRV supply is being pulled off the market, is again in the face of that supply increase in emission schedule. It basically has an effect of minimizing any negative impacts of that supply increase, and then directing that increased supply, because through the boosting mechanism, to those who are most committed and longer term aligned capital. And that's what we're really excited to bring to yAxis in V3, and something that is a huge improvement over the V2 implementation. And others such as Pickle Finance have also adopted this voting this vote escrowed model, and even Andre recently put together a proposal for Sushi, which would be a way for Sushi to use a gauges type model for its on-send program. So basically, if you have a liquidity mining program, if you back to our kind of mission strategy discussion, if you have a program, this is a great way to structure it. So really looking forward to that. And so we'll just kind of wrap it up with the third point as to what gauges mean for yAxis, and sort of at a higher level, kind of out of the weeds a little bit. So basically, they're just going to bring added utility for the yAxis token as a vault user, as now you can generate cash flow through the boosted yield from their yAxis beyond just staking. So it creates an inherent value of the token, because if you can use the token to earn more money, then there's value trickle down to the token itself. It also adds an element of scarcity, adds an element of pulling supply off the market with that locking component, as we talked about with CRV, that more and more of that supply, even as the supply is growing, that more and more of that supply is actually being pulled off the market and locked. So, like I said, definitely a successful model, and something that I'm excited to bring here. And then the last, and I think it's a very key component, is you have the behavioral incentive of rewarding those who are committing to yAxis and committing to the vision, and those are rewarded, and you're essentially going to continue to cycle out and disincentivize the mercenary capital that's not willing to commit. And so you're gonna, in essence, you're maximizing your utility and the bootstrapping effect from emissions. So again, back to our week 13 emission strategy discussion, is the big thing for emissions is using them in such a way that you are you're creating a sticky user base, and you're creating that network effect, and you're creating long-term value. And if you're going to if you're going to make the most of your emission phase and achieve those ends, then you want to make sure that you're rewarding those that are bought in, that are locked in, and that are committed. So that's definitely something that we're excited for, and hopefully that was a decent overview of kind of the difference between that staking model and the current staking model, from sort of if you're a staker or if you're a vault user, and then a little bit of background on some success elsewhere, and then what it all means at the end. So hopefully that was a little bit helpful, and kind of with that we'll dive into some of the questions that were asked ahead of time, and then if people have if you have live questions, feel free to. Actually, I think I might have forgotten to open the live channel, so yes, I did. So now the live channel is now open for questions. So if you have any live questions, feel free to toss them in there. Sorry about that that delay, but with that we will go to the questions that were asked in advance. So the TISC, as usual, leading us off. Love the idea of gauges and various lockup times, and think it's a great method of introducing utility to the token. And in future eras beyond era 4, do you predict new structures for gauge style locking periods as the DAO adopts new farming strategies past era 2? Especially considering obviously a 1-year lock would be beyond the 4 eras kind of outlined at the beginning, when the vision of the project, I guess, took a little reset. So as of now, the gauge structure is designed to roughly align with the emission schedule. The emission schedule originally was at least 1 year, obviously knowing that there would be some left over from the flexible budget, etc., where it could be extended on from that point as needed. So the gauge structure is basically and not as in like minting more. It's just that there's a flexible budget that was unallocated in such a way that it gives us the inherent flexibility if we did want to continue to bootstrap capital and kind of extend that bootstrap phase if the project and the community thought it was needed. So the gauge structure is designed to roughly align with that schedule, and kind of in its current state, emissions are needed for the gauges system to work. That is the design, but kind of as you mentioned, we hypothetically in the future could make the boost from yAxis grounded in the base yield as opposed to emissions, and have some optionality there. We'll kind of cross that bridge when we get there. We're a long ways off from the emission schedule kind of coming to a conclusion, and we can discuss the trade-offs and technical feasibility of trying to implement that in a different way, but definitely agree that it's a great model. So adapting it as the project matures seems to make sense, and look forward to community feedback and input kind of when we reach that point. And to the TISC second question about Poly Network hacker returning half the funds, the TISC asked about lunch portions being about half dinner portions, and what we all like most for lunch. So I agree, light lunch is good. You don't want to get weighed down. Rice bowl for lunch is pretty good. I don't know if Bobby, Wally, anybody else, AE, have any thoughts on some favorite lunch foods? I know MM's got he's got the sophisticated palate, so we'll see what he's got in the bag this week.
Oh, I'm just gonna go with my favorite lunch is burger, but hey, being American, our lunch portions are half of dinner, really. I'd rather flip that, to be honest. Sorry, CS. I think maybe a siesta after lunch is better, and then go with a lighter dinner.
Yeah, here in Brazil, they do a big barbecue. So it's not like a traditional American barbecue like you think. It's like a proper kind of open fire, and then they have it's like a big pit essentially, and you have these huge metal grates which you like insert in, almost like skewers, and you put the meat on that, and it's like a pretty wild thing. But that is like the 100% standard. Like even the smallest flat to the biggest house all has this same barbecue outside, which you have in like a gourmet area, it's called, which is like a typical Brazilian lunch.
I'll go next. So I'm quite boring. So with me, because I'm sort of training at the gym quite a bit, so it's anything protein and rice. So protein, so chicken, brown rice, or fish, and sweet potato. So that's me for the last couple of months, building them muscles.
Hey, you got any foods that your that are lunchtime favorites?
Well, honestly, actually, I skip lunch most of the time, and I just have breakfast and dinner, and then I fast in between. But if I do have lunch, it's usually something small, like just a bit of fruit, not much more than that.
Alrighty, good stuff, good stuff. So kind of moving on from moving on from there. Always great to get the food questions from the Tisk every week. Keeps things light around here. Martek asking, to what degree will the lockup times increase APR for the individual, and then how many yAxis are reserved for the different lockups? So to take the first part of that question, the increase in yield is determined by the amount of VE yAxis as compared to the amount of principal. So obviously, like you can't stake one yAxis and have a ton a ton of capital in the vault and then expect to receive a full boost. So the amount of the amount of VE yAxis that you receive is, like I said, it's linear based on your lock time, with the max earned from locking for the max duration, and then obviously decreasing linearly down from there to a min lock time. And obviously we like to develop some tools or something on that to help users kind of quickly calculate that. So that's definitely something that we'd like to see. So the second part of the question was about the access being reserved for different lockups. And basically, no yAxis needs to be reserved for each of the lockups. It's based on your lockup time. Like I said, it sort of translates your position, your staking position, into VE yAxis, which essentially kind of normalizes the different lock times into we'll call it a common language. And then the rewards from the emission schedule are just allocated to users in accordance with their VE yAxis, kind of in accordance with that common language. So that's sort of a normalizing factor that allows the system to operate in a much less complicated way, and makes it easier to allocate yAxis.
Or another way to think about it is that it's not like a separate pool for each locking duration. It's just one pool, and everyone's basically fighting over the emissions. And the more your voting power, or the longer you lock up your tokens, the stronger you are, and the more emissions of that one pool you'll get.
Alrighty, perfect. So yeah, hopefully that was helpful there. That was a good question. Big Poppy asked, why are they called gauges? So don't have a great answer on this, but gauges in real life, they just measure things, and gauges for this context, this is I dug around and curved for a bit for this, but gauges basically measure the amount of liquidity that the user is providing, and therefore their share of rewards. So it's just like a measurement device essentially. And Big Poppy also asked, is curve the only target for gauges, or is it an only curve thing? And so it's a little bit different setup than I think the way you phrased the question. So curve isn't the ones being targeted, rather the gauges model is an innovation that curve contributed to the DeFi space, that, like I mentioned before, other projects have kind of adapted it to their own implementation. So this code can kind of be adapted to each project for their own internal use, just how yAxis is kind of adapting the gauges to its own needs, and its own sort of specifications. So that's essentially the plan. It doesn't, curve itself doesn't need to be involved for the gauges to function, I guess would be the TLDR. And Big Poppy asked, essentially just series of questions and sort of comments about the delay, and basically obviously understand the disappointment with the delay, and desire to see the vaults out. And I think just unfortunately, this is like speaking more personally, it just delays are a very like real part of the DeFi space, and given that it's also new and you're really just wading into uncharted waters every time you innovate, and then to top that off, the people with the proper security credentials to kind of perform audits and other security measures are in super high demand, kind of beyond what those individuals could support. So you have that sort of mismatch there between supply and demand, and realistically, I mean, we'd love to put out more material on that, but like right now, it's just the code is finished and they will be released as soon as possible. There's not like a major issue or underlying problem. It's just kind of the reality of the space. It ended up, the audit queue ended up getting pushed back, I think, further than anyone had anticipated. I know multiple personally, and I'll probably toss it over to Bobby for some more color here, but I know personally multiple quality, like really good projects right now with experienced teams that are months behind on product releases, and much of it is due to audits, and others are just due to unexpected things they came across in the development process, things taking longer than expected. Um, and honestly, in those sort of places, I've ran into, most of the time, people are pretty understanding, because whether something releases today or in the near future doesn't really impact the mid long term value proposition and thesis behind what a project is trying to do. And it's better to release things when they're ready. And if you rush things to reach a certain date, that doesn't really create value for anyone. And whether something is today or a month from now, doesn't really change the long term, even the midterm value proposition of what a project is trying to do. That would essentially be how I view it. I don't know, spent a little bit of time in this space, and like I said, it's unfortunately a very real part of the space. And uh you know maybe like we mentioned, moving forward, probably less so on the deadlines, is just sort of when things are ready, they'll be released. And I think that's probably a little bit of a better approach moving forward. But like I said, I could toss it over to Bobby for a little more color there.
Yeah, so the issue in the space is just basically that DeFi has expanded massively, but the number of security firms has not. Like, if you look, there's basically not any new firms popping up. They should be, because it would be an amazing business right now to crack in tons and tons of cash, because every single firm out there has got a long queue. For example, Trailer Bits, you're looking at a nine month queue now to get an audit, and you can only start to get into the queue after you finished your code, as you have to submit the exact repo that you want to have quoted on and audited. So yeah, it's a problem. So even a lot of other notable companies just won't even respond to you now. They have such a big backlog of projects to do. For us, we were banking on QuantStamp doing our audit, as they did back in December and February. We had a prior relationship with them, essentially, and we were banking on them doing it again, essentially skipping the queue as we've done on the previous two occasions. But that hasn't come to pass this time. They won't do that for us anymore. So we have to get in the queue with everybody else. And that was a big surprise to us and a disappointment to us on the team as well. So we do have an audit now locked in, that's scheduled. So we just now have to wait our turn for that. What we're going to do in the meantime is look at ways to basically have more and more eyes onto the code to make sure that it's still safe. And we're going to start a forum discussion to see if we can do like a guarded launch, or what criteria the community would be happy with doing some sort of guarded launch, who we can invite in to look at the code, to try and do anything we can to try and get the product out basically in a safe manner that everyone will be comfortable with.
Yeah, no, thank you for that, Bobby. And I know people on the team and broader teams and active community members have been actively recruiting and looking at individuals who tend to be white hats and look at a lot of code to help look at the code and assess through the ImmuneFi system and all the things that yAxis has been really proactive about setting up. So trying to use that network as best as possible. And obviously, like Bobby said, I think it's important to just collect feedback, and that's one of the next things that is on the list is collect feedback about how the community and everyone like to see the process proceed from here, and what are the boxes that we'd like to see checked and before kind of moving forward and thinking about the balance between security and speed, etc. So, like I said, oh, sorry, like Bobby mentioned, like that was an unexpected thing on the audit side, but that's just the nature of those individuals being in high demand and stretched beyond their capacity.
I was just going to throw in there that the main message we want to put out there is that when you get an audit from a security firm, it's just an engineer that looks over the code essentially. But because they're from a firm, they can give you an official certificate. They give you a nice shiny award to put on your website or your blog, whatever. So that doesn't actually mean that it's automatically safe. It just means that someone qualified has looked over the code and they're happy with it. So what we're going to do is essentially get lots of other people who are also qualified and are very good people to look over the code. They're just not going to have a formal certificate maybe that you can use as like an advertising or as a marketing material, but it is still someone qualified that has looked over the code and given their thumbs up to it. So we're looking at getting multiple people to do that whilst the audit queue winds down as well. So yeah, that's as best as we can do for now, and we're looking to try and speed things up at however possible, essentially.
Yeah, great. I mean, I think we'll pretty much leave it there. And there's so many talented white hats that make more money doing that than they do working for an audit firm. So much more talented people that you can actually find in the space through that route. So excited to take the dual approach and see what the community has to say on that to that effect. And then Big Poppy, last thing, just asked a question about potentially giving NFTs for locking up funds. And obviously sort of similar to the champions table, we can look at kind of a next iteration of some non-financial rewards for users who maybe lock the full max duration or something along those lines. We could eventually look into doing something like that. I know that's something that other projects have done, like various popes and other things. So.
Yeah, and from my point of view, what I can add is that the Champions Tables NFTs, the first round of them is meant for contest winners, but the second and future rounds are actually meant for depositors as an extra incentive to use the vaults and to lock up your yAxis. So for example, it could go to users who are the first to deposit, or users who have large deposits, or users who have long-term deposits, that sort of thing. So any sort of reward in addition to financial rewards.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Eddie. So with that, I'll kind of move on to some of the live questions. Looking at Bob Sacamano, he asked a good question, basically about, do we essentially need to wait for the gauges to be launched to collect the Great Harvest Reward? Perhaps that can be part of the community discussion as well. Where I sit today is like, get it today, get it tomorrow. It's the same in my book, but I know other community members will probably feel differently on that. So what do you think, Bobby, about just making that a component of that conversation?
Yeah, I'm talking about that with TNC, if that's something that we can do. We were going to previously wait, because the idea was to hopefully get people to put that drop into the gauges and lock it up. But with the delay to the gauges, maybe we can bring that forward and do that instead. So that's something we are talking about. We just need to see whether that's going to be the best or not. Because the last thing that anybody wants is to, of course, give out the drop and then people to sell the tokens. We want people to stay invested in the project and to use the gauges as they're meant to be used. That was kind of like the intention of it. So yeah, we'll have to make a decision on that.
Okay, yeah, good stuff. And I think like I said, we can use the forum discussion as a way to outline some pros and cons and trade-offs there. So that's good. Yeah, so obviously, and then Echo Patient asked a question about basically regular updates when we're standing in the queue, when the code begins its audit. Yeah, I mean, obviously we can provide, you know, updates whenever information is available, especially, providing progress on the as the team is in contact with various white hats and other individuals to sort of review and incorporating that into the decision making process as well. And then we also had I'm sorry if I butchered the name, but Labai asked also mentioned that we could recommend a white hat that could perform an audit. So that's fantastic. Obviously, feel free to DM any of us if you have a recommendation there. Like I said, I know some of us have been in touch with various people and seen some progress and interest there. But obviously, the more eyes, the more qualified people, the better. And also another question is any thoughts on a cross chain in the future, on cross chain in the future. And obviously, I think that would be more of an outsourced feature, so using an outsourced service. But definitely, the long game is seeing one user basically front end that the user sees and deposits assets, and then those assets are taken to earn yield, kind of on behalf of the user. And those strategies eventually could use some of these cross chain functionalities. So obviously for it, but just not near term. The near term is just getting through the audit and getting as many eyes on the code as possible from qualified people, and then from there just pushing forward with the launch, and then rolling out the strategies from there. Kind of any closing thoughts from your side, Bobby? Otherwise, we will wrap it up, and we're a couple minutes past, but we're in good shape, and appreciate all the questions this week.
Yeah, like we definitely hear that everyone wants to know as much as they can about the audits and what's going on. So we're going to publish a lot more information just to make sure that everyone is on the same page, to make sure that we're as transparent as possible. We're not trying to hide anything. We want to be open with everyone. So we'll make sure that information gets out to you.
Alrighty. Well, thank you very much, Bobby, and hopefully everyone learned something today, and appreciate again all the questions as always, and the feedback and engagement. So have a great rest of your week and your weekend, and we'll be in touch soon, and we'll see you guys hopefully in the Discord and on next week's yard.
Thanks everyone. Cheers.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.